Hi, my name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Clubbing TV. In this episode, we're going to take a look at a really simple but meaty sounding little synth. It's the Behringer Toro.
Designed for bass, nothing but bass. Low as you go, feel me in your toes to your face. I sit under your radar, bass invader with 11 faders. I vibrate. I'm designed for bass, nothing but bass. I spread like a wave, you can't engage. Breaking bass pins and shaking foundations for 5 decades. That's how history is made. Now here's the joke from coast to coast. I'm the original footnote. I'm bass sick. I'm bass sick. I'm designed for bass.
And I can only wholeheartedly apologise for that rubbish rap and for the length of that intro demo as well. I normally do much shorter ones, but there's a reason I did a longer one for this, and that's because there's a lot less on this to demo. When we look at it, we've only got 2 oscillators, A and B. They're both sawtooths. Slightly out of tune. We detune them with the beat knob. It's called the beat knob because you can hear it beating, and on the original Moog Taurus that this is a bit of a clone of, basically, that beating used to stay the same from key to key. You can hear that beating like a throb, bomb, bomb, bomb. So it gets faster the higher up the keyboard you go. On the original, that stayed constant no matter what key you played, which is a bit like the Sub 37 actually. I was hoping that would do this, and it doesn't, which means it's not as special as was hoping. But we've got just the 2 oscillators and a filter. And that's almost all the control you've got. You can see here we've just got, I think it's 11 faders. They light up, they look nice. And actually the size of this thing is great. It actually feels like it was meant to be this size, unlike the other sort of Behringer clones that are quite small compared to the original synths, and they do feel like there's a lot crammed in at times. If we look at the Pro 1, for example, there's an awful lot going on there. When you compare that to something like the Pro 1 keyboard, it does feel like it's a miniature synth, which compared to the original, it definitely is. But the Taurus really does feel about the size it should be. So let's just take a look at what we get, shall we? You'll be familiar with this housing if you've seen any of the other Behringer kit, and I just showed you the Pro 1 there. So it's the same as all those. You can take them out. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little screws on the front. You can pop that out and you can stick it in the Euro rack if you like. We've got some Euro rack connections here, although it's not something I suspect people will put in a Euro rack because it hasn't got a whole load of connectivity. On the back, we've just got a single audio out, these little switches to change the MIDI channel. Got a MIDI through, USB and the power. And we've got a MIDI in on the front. I'm using it with USB MIDI at the minute. Sometimes on any of these synths, you might get some really strange noises if you use USB MIDI. So if you do, I suggest using something that's got some of these blocks on the end. They filter out all that weird electronic noise you can get sometimes with the USB. So we've also got a headphone output, and I say we've got a pitch CV in, a filter CV in, and a gate CV in. If you use any of those CVs, you lose control from the keyboard. You have to put a gate in to trigger it. But as I say, I can't really see many people doing that. But what exactly is it? Because it is a bit of a weird synth. Based on the Moog Taurus from the 70s, and this was on loads of tracks, all these mad prog rock tracks that you probably never heard of, but guitarists use them and synth players use them because they had big pedals, so you could have a bass line coming from a synth, and the pedals were like, I don't know if you've ever seen a church organ's pedals, like that, really huge things. Doesn't have a massive range across the keyboard, But what it does really well. And we've got presets on it as well. We've got this variable button, and that basically gives you what you've got on the sliders. I think I said earlier that you only changed oscillator 2's frequency with the beat knob, but you can actually use this slider as well to get an extra octave out of it. But we can't go very high. But it's not something I think you'd use for big, huge lead tones, big, huge basses. Yes. It has got a really nice tone to it, but there just isn't very much you can do with it. We've got a little envelope here. Not getting any decay because we've got to turn decay on. You'll notice, just like you get on all those Moogs, as you bring in the emphasis, it's called it, that's the resonance, you lose a lot of bass. But there are your two main filter controls, plus there's a little filter envelope here as well. It's a bit weird actually, it doesn't act like a standard envelope. This attack section doesn't slow stuff down, it just reduces the amount of change you're getting on the filter. It's a bit weird. So it's not changing the attack time, the contour decay is though. So this one changes the amount of attack, and this one changes the timing of it. And that's what you find with these old 70s things. They all work in slightly different ways. And it's like people were trying to work out how synths would work. And we've settled now really on ADSR envelopes. But back in the day, all these weird synths that you got from ARP and Moog all did it in different ways. I suppose just trying out what works best. And it wasn't this, was it? Again though, I keep on saying it, it does have a really nice tone. And finally here we've got this filter knob. And this is a bit like the filter cutoff. Let's just take all this down. Except for the filter knob just gives you about 25% of this range, so. That may be 50%. But that is the same as that. And to be honest, I'm not sure what that's there for. But you can modulate the filter with CV, so you can plug a pedal into this and do that. So one of the coolest things about this when it came out originally was that it had presets. You just didn't get presets on anything like a Mini Moog. Got this Toro. And that's the signature Moog Taurus sound. And if you imagine you're playing that with pedals, you're not going to be doing really fast stuff on it, are you? Tuba, you can't have a 70s instrument without having orchestral presets. But in a stadium with huge speakers back in the day, that'd rattle like nothing else could. And then this bass tone. Bit rubbish. And you'll notice I've got the decay on here to take that off. This gives us a standard decay time. This isn't doing anything. Neither is anything else. And you might have noticed that they're not lit when they're not being used. So going to variable, they're all lit because they're active. It's quite a nice little touch that actually. But when we go into the presets, they're not, but decay is. And then we've got octave as well. And finally, I think this is finally, we've got glide. Let's turn the glide up. But you really want to have a little fiddle with these faders Just can't do it when you're in the presets, so you really will probably always be in that variable mode. Whoops. And that's basically it. That's the Moog Toro. So, what are my final thoughts? So there you have it, the Behringer Toro. It's a really simple but nice sounding machine. But as a yay or a nay, would I buy it? I have to say, out of all the Behringer machines I've ever played with, this one will be a no from me, maybe surprisingly. But that's because it's so simple and it's got a lot of competition. It's got the Behringer Cat. For example, we've got the Behringer Pro 1. So two really nice, really complex monosynths, or if you are after a less complex monosynth, there's the Behringer Wasp. So Behringer are almost their own competition in this space, and these are really good value synths, all of them. If we look at this, the Toro is £199, the Wasp's £135, so you save yourself £64 if you buy the Wasp and you get an extra oscillator. You don't get that move tone, but it's still a really nice synth. Then there's the Model D, and that's just £259, and as you probably already know, that's based on the Mini Moog. So for just £60 more than the Toro, you're getting a full Mini Moog clone, or taking the cost up a little bit more to £339. So that's a full 8 voices of analog polysynth for just $339, just an extra £140. I know it's getting a little bit higher now, but if you don't have the extra £140, you've also got the Crave, and the Crave is £166. And it's only £33 less, but you get an awful lot more synth for your money here. You've got the LFO, you've got all the patch points, you've got the different oscillator shapes. There's lots more you can do with it, and you can have an awful lot more fun with it. But I do understand why people might want the Toro. I mean, it's such a basic synth that if you're playing this live, you can't go too far wrong, especially if you're relying on one of the presets. And you know, we've only got those few sliders there, so you can't go too far wrong. You can't completely mess up a gig if you're using this. But I think this is more for people that loved those old 1970s tracks where those old prog rockers used this with the foot pedals. So yeah, it's a difficult one for me, this, but I've got loads of other synths. Although I haven't bought this, I wouldn't recommend it if you're looking for something a bit more complex. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, don't forget you can catch it whenever you like on our Clubbing TV official YouTube channel on the From the Studio playlist. And if you've got any queries, just drop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. And if you are into your synths and your music tech, do take a look at my Starsky Carr YouTube channel as well, where I've got a lot more of an in-depth review of this as well, but it's still got the rubbish rap in it. Anyway, I'll see you in the next episode of From the Studio.